Good evening and welcome to tonight's edition of Fact Sheets live on ETV, live on Facebook, live on Instagram and Twitter as well. Also live on Nisim 95.9 in Bogatanga and 100.1 in Tamale. Tonight we're here to talk about our practice, our job, the job that puts food on our table and yet requires us to be as professional as possible. The job that places us in a position to be able to check the actions and inactions of people who matter in society, not forgetting the so-called ordinary man and his interests. My name is Samuel Shen, and tonight we are in the office of Mr. Afiomoni, who is the president of the Ghana Journalists Association. He has been spearheading the affairs of the association, and tonight we want to find out what he makes of our practice so far, what he makes of the ethics of the job, and then also issues to do with the governance of our nation, the utterances of politicians and others as well. That's our focus tonight on Fact Sheet. Good evening, Dr. Afiomoni.
Good evening, Honorable.
Honorable, but you haven't reached there yet.
No, Honorable, you're on right.
Yes, in my own right.
Yes.
In my own right, yes. Well, in the Ghanaian context, Honorable obviously would be a man of power and authority and a politician for that matter. But it's good to be in your office, sir.
Thank you, it's a pleasure.
And how has life been treating you?
The grace is sufficient.
Especially at a time when the Ghana Journalists Association has been, going through its own turbulent times.
Turbulence, challenges of all kinds are part and parcel of this position. And I've been in this umbrella organization for more than 20 years. And I know how hot the kitchen can be. So I'm sufficiently insulated from the heat, and I'm focused to, as much as possible, be diligent to my mandate and dutiful to the people who will attend.
Now, let's talk about the times that you describe as the times when the kitchen was really hot and was very turbulent for you under your tenure or your presidency. Can you give us some instances where you felt things were really, really, hot in there for you as a president?
Given the nature of your ministry and given the orientation of certain practitioners, and the media are a microcosm of the Ghanaian society, sharply divided on partisan lines. And you and I can testify that because the entry points of our profession is so loose, unlike law, unlike medicine, like pharmacy, our constitution does not frown on who doesn't qualify or who even qualifies to practice journalism. Article 162 clause 3 specifies emphatically that there shall be no impediment in the way of anybody who wants to establish a system of mass communication. This is a clear departure from yesteryears when we were shackled by the newspaper licensing law, which give undue power to the government to license journalists or determine who practice journalism. And we do recall with pain that in those hellish environments, some good journalists were compelled by circumstances around that time to do local journalism or sport journalism, for which they were not called. So the 1992 Constitution came as a savior, not only to liberalize the media space, but also empower us to do our job as expected. Freedom is the oxygen of our profession. Freedom is the essence of our profession. So once you lack freedom, and then you really have the latitude, the freedom to do your work. And We thank God for the framers of the 1992 Constitution. But this does sort of cure the fact that we have challenges. And challenges are a blessing. They can be described as a hormone which can propel us to high heights. So, and going back to the bitter experiences I will recall. You know, it's not within the bounds of possibility to monitor all radio and TV stations. And once a while, people draw attention. 30 stations, 30 personalities taken to the cleaners, and sometimes the allegations leveled are ridiculous. It's outlandish. And as I've been in this profession, for more than 30 years. So I know that journalists are driven by all kinds of motives, some pure, some impure, and some partisan, and some other something else to do the things they do. So the time my daughter came to me, so Daddy, my friends said they were insulting on radio. So it's part and parcel of it. Even Jesus Christ, with all his sinless perfection, was described as a drunkard, demon-possessed, Fujian, and all kinds of inelegant descriptions. But yet, he fulfilled his mandate. And today, believers are following him and propagating what he did. So, prosperity will judge my little contribution to this profession, but I have no regret serving in my capacity as president.
What would you say would be your legacy if journalists are speaking and your name is mentioned?
The fatherly disposition. Okay. A leader should be like a father to all, not in a political sense. Father to all. A leader should model the way. A leader should have a big heart, and even when things are bad, when the going becomes tough, as a leader, you should be prepared to climb mountains even when you are not prepared. Sometimes you be in valleys, and sometimes you be pelted with all kinds of rubber stones. Some justify, some unjustify. And the important thing is to exhibit that stoic exterior. So you should be emotionally stoical at all times. And this is a gift. I always pride myself on that. It's not by my doing, it's a gift that, God has given me that temperament, that's fortitude, that character, strength of character to keep going even when it is tough. So professionally, I think we prioritize, my administration has prioritized education of journalists, and this is predicated on the principle that journalists are educated and not born. But this principle was espoused, articulated by Mr. Pulitzer, who said journalists are educated and not born. And even though he was insulted, he was harassed, he was pelted with all kinds of verbal stones. The complexities, the challenges, the mistakes, the goofs, gaps, and everything vindicate the rectitude of that situation. So education, as we speak, we have signed a number of MOUs with certain institutions, and under such MOUs, they provide training, well-vision, for instance, nuclear power Ghana, nursing Ghana, and a host of them to do capacity building. I believe that there's a direct relationship between your investment in capacity building and the standard of journalism in this country. And as I said, it bears repeating that journalists are educated and no problem. Of course, some are gifted with linguistic mastery. Some are gifted with literary embroidery. They can write so well. But just like a pastor who is so anointed, he or she needs to attend a Bible school in order to be well refined and shaped for the task. So apart from, in terms of training, local and international, we'll be exposing our people we have a relationship with certain embassies, U.S., China, Russia, and a host of others.
Mm.
And we journalists given the opportunity to travel and broaden the horizon. And I would say, without any fear of contradiction, that we will never be discriminatory in offering such opportunities to our people.
Mm.
In other words, our policies, our principles, or whatever drives our administration is not Accra-centric. There's a tendency to consider only people in Accra when such opportunities beckon. And I will tell, and my colleagues in the regions will also testify that every region, in every trip, if it's 10 trips, we make sure that all the regions are accommodated. And this has brought is a word of change as far as such opportunities are concerned.
Oh. So let's talk about the fraternity and the issue about the turbulence and the fact that now we've been able to fix a date for the elections, the 3rd of October, if I'm right.
Yes, the committee will meet, and but the 3rd of October, under the terms of agreement, 3rd of October should on or before 3rd of October, so they can decide on the date for the elections. But the good is that we are out of the woods in terms of litigation, and the course is clear for the elections to be conducted hopefully next month.
All right. So are the structures in place for the election to be conducted?
And we have an election committee as specified by the Constitution. And under the terms of agreement with the plaintiff who took us to court, but this is something which had been planned before the unfortunate litigation started. That for the sake of transparency and accountability, the electoral body should be expanded to bring on board the aspirants and all the stakeholders. So this is what has been done, and so they scrutinize the electoral register. They also agree on certain timelines and what to go into relations to ensure that journalists choose executives who be responsive to their needs, and also they continue or put the association on a firmer path of professional ascendance.
So as we speak, there are 3 contestants. If I'm
correct.
correct.
3 for the presidency. Yeah, 3 for the presidency.
How do you weigh them, these contestants? Do you think they have what it takes, to wear that big shoe?
I think the voters will decide who they think at this point in time.
Not necessarily to choose one, but I'm saying that the 3 of them, do you think they've got what it takes to be considered worthy of this seat as GGA president?
I'm very hesitant to assess them. I believe they did self-assessment before they put themselves forward to be elected. I'm also inclined to believe that at any point in time, journalists, professional as they can, will choose people who are fit to wear the tag of president, vice president, and other executives of the GGA.
Is there a possibility there could be a long hand of a politician influencing how the elections turn out at the end of the day as to who becomes the GGA president? Because we all know how important your role is in terms of government policies and programs. Is there that possibility?
Politicians are politicians, and politicians will always be politicians. They want to influence. A local parlance holds that there are so many ways of killing a cat. So politicians, even though the Constitution state that they should play a hands-off role in the media, but you and I again can testify that they try to peddle the influence in so many forms.
Are you seeing signs that they are in there trying to manipulate things? Do you see signs? In this particular contest?
Attempt to influence the outcome of PG elections are not alien to are not alien to us, and they will not be alien in the future. And politicians may have their favorites, and if I may recall what happened about 4 years ago or 3 years ago when we were standing for elections, so many things were bandied about that some politicians would prefer a certain candidate, and certain candidates also package themselves as belonging to certain camps. But with my experience, I believe that this is not the way to go, because our sense of professionalism should always be in full glow. This is my principle, and for which I'm prepared to die. Because we all vote, and our voting patterns should not determine how we should run this association. Because, mind you have to lead people of all kinds of partisan hues and interests. So there's a need, it calls for maturity, it calls for some particular qualities like objectivity, like neutrality, like which, to the best of my ability, I've tried to exemplify. So I will expect the future presidents and other executives to also try as much as possible to be insulated from such partisan interests, not to fall prey to partisan capture.
Were you, as president of the GGA, at any point in time ever approached by any of these political parties in terms of an issue that you would want for you to speak in a certain tone and language?
I've had, on several occasions, I've tasted a brush of anger, threats from people in high positions.
Oh, you've been threatened?
There was a time I read something on the news portal that among the 10 most castigated personalities in Ghana. I said, wow, I never knew I was that important. I always see myself as a grassroots person. But if today leading the umbrella education, it's only by His grace. It's only by His grace, not by length of service or the little school I've attended.
I'm interested in the threats that would come to a GGA president. What sort of threats?
There was a time. That was last year. Three reporters did a story at Mokola on soldiers who were insistent that they should delete the footages of molestation by soldiers. And the cameraman was taken to the MA office, he was brutalized, and soon after they came here, we issued a statement. So from the military hierarchy came a call that why should I comment on that? Because we were going to the post last year, and the military had been mentioned in bad light. And according to them, it's whether it further sullied their image. So I said I was compelled to do what I had sworn to do, to rally to the defense of our people at all times. And I will prepare to withdraw the statement if it was proven that the journalists were not molested. And so back and forth, and I stood my ground, and nothing happened. There was a time I also spoke against the molestation of harassment of Manas Ajuri when he did the story on vigilantes occupying the castle. Again, the establishment came after me. Why, should I, comment on that? I said, yes, the documentary you did had a factual foundation that some people were illegally occupying the castle. How the whole thing was hyped is another matter altogether. I'm not interested in that. And back and forth, and it's ended. I can cite so many examples But as I said, your skin should say that you can, your skin should be able to withstand such pressures. And they will come, and sometimes they come from very high places. But when you're focused, as I said, when you have that strong exterior, it will help you to overcome such challenge.
So, with all these instances that you have given us, these are coming from, top, powerful,
top,
places.
Yeah.
And so I ask myself, so if we get to hear, it is the same administration that touts itself as, passing the right to information. It is the same administration that, touts itself as promoting media freedom. And yet, behind the scenes, the president of the entire media fraternity is being threatened. How do you feel when you hear these comments coming from the same members of that administration highlighting these things?
Such threats or such unwelcome engagement do not obscure the fact that we are in an environment of press freedom. And the empirical evidence is the report by journalists without borders every year. And the latest report indicates that we are third in Africa and 30th in the whole world. And the report also indicates that Ghana's media system is among 5 described as satisfactory in Africa. So to say that our media system is without challenges is to share the truth. And to say that our media system is bereft of freedom is also to play the ostrich. Our sense of objectivity should be in full glow at all times. And objectively speaking, I would say that yes, Ghana's, with all the challenges, we are still a reference point, a standard measure as far as media freedom is concerned for Africa and the rest of the world.
We'll take a short breather. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation, focusing on the quality and standards and the welfare of journalists in this country. We'll be right back. Alright, so you're welcome back. You're still live on ETV, and this is Fact Sheet, live on NISIM 95.9 and 100.1 in Bogatanga and Tamale as well. We are tonight in the office of Dr. Afemoni, who's the president of the GJA, and we are having a conversation about our business, our job as journalists in this country. Look, are you satisfied with the caliber of journalists we have in the country today?
Yes and no.
Okay.
And the fact is that standards in the media are not uniform. In certain sections, standards are appreciably high, and on the flip side, standards are dismally low. But if you strike a balance between the high standards and low standards, I will say with all confidence that our highs overshadow our lows. Because I just stated that we are still a reference point and standard measure for other countries. I was in Niger in December for the presidential elections, both the first one and the runoff. And so after the voting, I was expecting to see journalists filing stories or interviewing people to do it. All the police stations were bare, and so I asked our colleagues there why they were not covering the post-election activities, and they told me that they were not permitted to do that. But Ghana is a different country, and this sometimes you don't value what you have until you lose it. And again, let me make reference to some of the hellish experiences yesterday. When I was a reporter at GBC, we did a story, which a very local story. We said Kenya was going to the polls. And so J.J. Rawlings, the head of state, called the news. And the first question he asked, do you know I can sack you? The master, for doing a story which impliedly asked me to also hold the elections and then hand over power. Those were the years. Now, journalists.
What happened in that case where, that headline you published and then the president called you? Did you withdraw the headline or you pursued your editorial direction?
Since then, no one had the courage to even come and do any story on elections anyway. Since then, that was censorship. Censorship, direct censorship from the highest office. Direct censorship. It's also even an offense to even play gospel music. Because the system was promoting African religion. But so for
Yeah.
So you didn't even have the luxury, the freedom to be select your music as a DJ. Those were the days. So we come a long way from those years up to now. So now we have journalists who can take home, who are prepared to put their lives on the line to defend the truth, speak power to officialdom, hold the legs of people in positions of responsibility to the fire of accountability, expose dark spots, fight corruption, and still, so even though some...
But even that, some would say that it's just a few of the journalists who are holding politicians and society as a whole to account for their actions and their deeds.
I'll dispute that.
Really?
Yeah, because the whole media system littered with more than 500 radio stations. There were 1,800 registered newspapers, 148 news stations, and a host of others. Social media also complements what traditional media are doing. And go on that platform. The media, when it comes to traditional media, the media creates platforms for ordinary Ghanaians to ventilate their concerns, articulate their views on any issue under the sun, hold people to account. In those dark periods when we were enveloped in the culture of silence, that was unthinkable, totally unthinkable. So it's not true that only some few people who are helping us to fulfill Article 162 plus 5 of the 1990 Constitution, which empowers journalists to hold to account people.
The instances you speak about are, let's say, segments on shows and and
this is the dominant. This is the dominant scene.
But I'm thinking about, for instance, if we were supposed to take journalists in this country, how many?
And the spaces are created by journalists. This space are created by journalists.
Okay.
So you dare not even open this phone line for people to speak their mind.
Indeed.
You will be held responsible. You will not even dare. To understand? So if even you will not say it, but you allow others to hold the government to account. And this is not. This is the situation all over. This is just broad picture everywhere, and this is being spearheaded. This critical foundational principle of participation, as far as good governance is concerned, is being spearheaded by journalists. Yeah. So this is a big plus for journalists. And when it comes to even peace, it's not the politicians who take the credit. Again, the chunk of the credit should go to the journalists in promoting peace. Why? Because by allowing people to ventilate their concerns, they create a space for aggrieved persons to resolve their issues in non-violent way. So if we are not engulfed in war, it's kind of like Libya didn't have that opportunity. So when look at they are in shambles now. So our roles are just indescribable. But sometimes people will paint all of us like say my kissing brush when a few go wayward are reckless in terms of ethics.
I remember one conversation I had with you where you stated categorically that you were going to fight to take journalists out of the pockets of politicians. Are journalists in the pockets of politicians per your position you just espoused just a few minutes ago?
Landers once said, and it's best quoting, that the naked truth is better than a well-dressed lie. And the naked truth is that some journalists are in the pocket, deep in the pockets of politicians. And this is because of our system, the free-for-all system, free-willing system, where we witness on a constant basis the invasion of the media space by politicians and business class. So no wonder we have MPP, pro-MPP media, pro-NDC media.
Is there anything wrong with that?
What they do is propaganda. Propaganda journalism. And propaganda, by definition, is a selective use of facts. Selective use of facts. And not the peddling of falsehood. But what you see is that there's an ugly cocktail of falsehood and facts. And that should not be. For instance, a pro-NDC station has all the right to root for NDC, criticize the present government based on facts, and then extol the achievements of NDC when they're in power. There's nothing wrong with that, provided whatever you say, whatever you write, has a substratum of facts. Journalism is about facts and not falsehood. And on the flip side, we have pro-NDC MPP media. So the journalists working in such media organizations also have all the freedom to express in the most elegant manner all the good things about free SHS, 1G, 1F, and what have you. They also all have a factual foundation. So you are being propagandists, but you are selecting your facts, but based on facts. So this is what we expect political journalists to do, and we also expect others to toe the line of neutrality. It calls for a streak of independence and objectivity to toe that line of independent journalism. So independent journalism should operate side by side with partisan journalism, and the people will decide. I always tell journalists whenever I have the opportunity that our media consumers, many of them are more discerning than we are. Many of them are more intelligent than we are. Many of them are more educated than we are. So we should not, on any occasion, take them for granted. Not at all.
Do you enjoy the content in the media space as GJ president? Do you enjoy the content you read, listen, watch? Do you enjoy it?
No, we are enjoying the dividend of pluralism, and by virtue of what I experienced yesterday and what I'm experiencing now, and when the social media were seen as a one-way megaphone, was propagating the gospel of Islam, and then muting dissenting voices. Now we have we have spoiled for choice. So many media outlets, and from there, out of the chaotic pie of different angles, you can discern the truth.
But do you enjoy the content?
I do. Some again, yes and no. Some, you take the pride when you see journalists, be objective, and objectivity, theoretically, we are told, is the purest gem of this profession. So every policy journalist will enjoy objective journalism, and you need a special bent to that line, because certain forces will come after you if you are perceived to be objective. And then so journalists who are taking it upon themselves, who are bracing all odds, who are defining all kinds of pressures, resisting all kinds of pressures, to be on the path of independent and objective journalism. All that I would say, that may God bless them indeed, because this is what we need. So the future of this nation is hinged on objective and independent journalism, and not the partisan one.
Let me take you on a very slippery path, which has to do with the appointment of journalists into government. During the NDC era, we saw it, where journalists were made deputy ministers, they were serving on boards, and all. We have seen the same under the NPP, where journalists are on boards and all. Do you subscribe to journalists being made to sit on boards while still practicing?
As far as this practice does not offend the law, some will start as independent journalism and veer off into politics. That is their choice. So far as they are not offending the law, we have no problem about that. And our system also recognizes and embraces political journalism. So you have the type of journalist, caliber of journalists who's able to root for any of the parties. That is fine. As far as I said, as far as what they say, what they do is consistent with the fundamental principles of our profession, we have no problem about that.
So, for instance, if I am, let's say the GJ is a state-owned entity, and you're a CEO and a board member, and then there is let's say a scandal that hits our entity, where do I stand? As a journalist who writes, or as a journalist who sits on radio, or as a journalist who sits on TV? Isn't there a possibility of a case of a conflict of interest?
That's where your conscience should scream at you for you to do the right thing, because we are all gifted with consciences. So any journalist who does not have a prick of conscience when it goes wrong, or twinge of guilt, then you need to re-examine yourself.
But should the conscience point not be where you are called in the first place to serve on a board, knowing that there's a possibility that being in government, a scandal may indeed happen, and that you'd have to either criticize or defend?
And you can take ex-President Mahama as an example. He is a member of this association, and he is risen to occupy the most consequential office in the land, as the president. He still votes, was practicing journalism when he relocated to politics. We have no problem about that. And some of our colleagues too find themselves in certain boards, because the system recognizes their contribution in certain areas. And mind you, our job is not only to inform, educate, entertain, and to survey the social environment, but also to contribute to national development. And that's the bigger picture. So in whatever way your contribution will be recognized. so long as it does not offend the principles of our profession or our constitution, the DJ constitution. We have no quarrels about that.
Our welfare. Journalists don't have a place to lay their heads. Journalists need to get a car. And I can cite examples where it's taking politicians for them to get cars to use. Sometimes auction cars, by relationship to a politician, that's when you get to have a car to use. If you make a house to buy and pay within a period of time. However, are you satisfied about the welfare of journalists in this country?
Again, it is one of our topmost priorities to improve the welfare of journalists, given the facts that there is a direct relationship between the conditions of service of journalists, or their welfare, and overall quality in media output. There's a direct relationship. So the first step we took when we took over was to unionize the Ghana Journalists Association. For the first time, this unionization baby had been incubating for decades, but we came to unionize it. Mm-hmm. So this, all that it means is that we are now empowered legally to serve as intermediaries between our workers and the employers in instances of injustices and or poor remuneration and all that. Mm. So we need to matriculate to a different level to ensure that we are again legally empowered to sit down with management to negotiate handsome or anything which will be commensurate with what they put in for our journalists. It's a process that we've taken the first step, and we have also ensured we come up with an insurance policy for journalists out of the dues, contract dues they pay. This Saham insurance company is our insurance. So in case of bereavement, in case of weddings, in case of other social needs, the welfare package will rally to your aid, which we've done for the first time in the history of this association. Before the 2020 elections, again we went into an MOU with SIC to ensure journalists, 6 of them were injured during the elections, and we made sure that they've given the financial package to compensate for their injury. Some had 36,000, 20,000, and all that. So this is, again, this is unprecedented in the history of the association. So we, as far as welfare is concerned, we will continue to prioritize it because our heart bleeds whenever we see journalists in poor conditions, and because they are an indictment to the leadership of the association. So whatever it will take for them to improve conditions. The one instance we can also cite, TV3 workers when they were about to be laid off, again went to TUC helped us with some lawyers. No, we are an affiliate of TUC, so that they went there, and then they did their best to mitigate a nasty situation. So it's tells you that there's a welfare, except that we do not normally come to the open. For instance, this election, the 2020 elections, what we did for journalists, we haven't come to the open to trumpet what we've done, but in heart, but the welfare of journalists is at the core of what you do at the umbrella body of journalists in Ghana.
All right, good evening, welcome. If you just join us, we're taking a short breather. You're live on Fact Sheet, live on ATV, live on Facebook, live on Twitter and Instagram as well, and live on NISIM 95.9 and 100. So you're welcome back. This is Fact Sheet live on ATV, live on NISIM 95.9 and 100.1 as well. We're here in the office of Dr. Afilmani Moni, who is the GJA president, and we've been talking about our profession, but we are supposed to play the role of the guard dogs in the system, ensuring that the skill at all time is balanced in terms of communication by politicians and other people that our lenses may focus on. So, The recent comment by the former president, John Dramani Mahama, do or die. What do you make of it?
Again, it calls for the need to filter what the former president said to the tight weave of objectivity or reality. And an objective accepted what he said, or that that statement was poorly communicated. Because if or die was wrong and it's still wrong, then do and die was and it's still wrong. Because we don't need to create a situation which has a tendency to douse the flames of tensions or stoke the embers of violence. We don't need to do that. I'm not in the same, but as an astute communicator as he is, maybe he didn't mean that NDC supporters to go after their opponent, and regardless of the consequences, they should judge.
But he stands by his comments. He says that he stands by it and that he's not going to retract with all the pressure that has been mounted for him to retract. He says that it's an idiomatic expression and that if you Google or if you check a dictionary, it's in there. Its meaning can be found.
Communication is a very wide area, and how did it come out to the very people who are supposed to consume that communication? How did it come out? And like other guy, even though he tried to draw a line of distinction between order bidai and do and die, we try as much as possible to be neutral as possible. From an objective point of view, I think it was poorly communicated.
You would wish that he retracts? If you had the...
I'm not insisting that he should retract. I'm not insisting that he should retract. I said he's an astute communicator. And he's a member of association, and he's a member of my church, Assemblies of God. He's a friend.
So have you communicated this position to him?
No, just like the current president, whom I very much respect, Celeste Nana-Akufo-Addo. We have a nice working relationship, unprecedented working relationship. But this will not shackle us from expressing our views, anything we deem unpalatable. So as far as we are concerned, we need to create a new environment, environments which will not give people the opportunity to scale up tensions.
Okay.
The high voltage tensions which tend to characterize our politics and our elections. Something we need to look at if we have to go for it. We do recall 2008, 2012, 2016, 2020, we were teetering on the brink of self-destruction, and it took the redemptive benevolence of God to pull us from the precipice. So there's no point to do anything or say anything which will send us back to that situation. So CC should always serve as a guide. And his former president is a historian and also a journalist, and as I said, a fine gentleman and a politician. So I don't think we should go back and forth about the rectitude or otherwise of that statement. I think that should serve as a guide. The French writer Michel Montaigne once said, "I learn little from good examples, but more from bad examples, which serve as daily lessons." So I believe the bad examples like Order Bidai and Do and Die should serve as daily lessons to people who want to lead us in the future.
Now, let me ask about your assessment of the first tenure of the NPP administration, obviously a Ghanaian, you voted. And so you'd have your own take as to how they performed. How would you assess them?
I think we can base assessment on the outcome of the 2020 elections.
Mm.
Yes, I said never take the Ghanaian for granted. And I've said it best repeating that many of our people out there are more discerning than we are, more intelligent than we are, more educated than we are. I happened to be around Mopala some time ago, and I had a shoe seller. He spoke. He said, "After my TRC, reason why I did it running so no jelly general is rough. After my TRC, so instinctively my interest was aroused. So I said, then I chairman said, no, so Central for can inquiry. Only can inquiry, I'm can inquiry. Said the role is jelly one, and those chimes with number of studies which indicate that confidence in the media is on the wane, while standards in certain sections are on the rise. So I should never take them for granted. Once you go to listen to someone who is selling shoes and Mokola, describing journalists as liars and perpetration of mendacity should have no room in journalism, which is touted by Gabriel Marquez as the best profession in the world.
Interesting. Do you subscribe to the position of that shoe seller that journalists don't tell the truth?
I cited empirical evidence that people are losing confidence in the media, whilst perpetration of mendacity, mediocrity is on the rise in certain sections of the media. So this is a challenge. This is a challenge. And we believe that it's all about about ethics and professionalism. The right ethical standard, professional standards, we believe are not the product of happenstance, but they are the fruit of investment in training and conscientizing, speaking to journalists to tell them that no, this job is more important. This job is of unimaginable importance. No wonder Marquez describes it as the best profession in the world.
Let me ask this then. Does this job pay if it's the best profession in the world? Does it pay?
Ironically, paradoxically, the best profession does not guarantee the best pay packet. Does not. But journalism is a calling. If you are called, irrespective of how bad conditions are, you have to be called. They're like priesthood. They're like teachers. If you are to report handsomely, most handsomely, certain professions in Ghana, on the world, teaching, people who shape the minds and ensure the good human development of the teachers. Because time the British government realized that they need to reward teachers, and a package of £50,000 each was given to teachers just to people, raise their morale and all that. So the free teachers should go in tandem with qualitative improvements in the standards, working conditions of teachers. So they're like journalists, because we also educate, we also inform. So if because, and we know standards are so poor in some worst case scenarios, some journalists are not paid at all. And as the saying goes, mamas survive, mamas eat. Yeah. And so that the survival instinct pushes certain journalists into all kinds of fights, some criminal. some will have to malign, blackmail, and all that. And so the blackish blemishes in the media sometimes are caused or are created by the situation in which we find ourselves. But this is no justification for maligning or blackmailing or peddling falsehood or burying the truth. At all times, we should hold aloft the banner of truth, because our first obligation as journalists is not to our employers, but is to the truth.
In ending our conversation, I would reference a case in, I believe, 2015, thereabout, 2015, 2016, thereabout, which had to do with the Content Authorization Bill that we started talking about and vehemently the media fought against. With the kind of things that are said on radio, that are said on TV, is it about time we thought about the Content Authorization Law again?
Article 162, Clause 4 of the 1992 Constitution states emphatically that journalists should not be subjects of interference from the government, should not be penalized or harassed for their editorial opinions or the contents of their publications. It's in and the Constitution is the supreme law of the land.
Okay.
So anything which will frown on this constitutional provision should be resisted with all the force we can muster.
Well, Doc, we are grateful that.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure, and thank you for this opportunity. And may the God of heaven bless you and bless your viewers and listeners. And to all the media community, I also thank you for the opportunity to serve you. And we have a responsibility to ensure that this country grows in all dimensions. This country is put on the path of democratic ascendance. And journalists have indispensable role to play in all this, and they should not flinch from playing this role even at the peril of their lives.
We are grateful, sir.
Thank you so much.
And this has been Fact Sheets live on ETV, live on Facebook, live on Twitter, Instagram as well, and then live on Nisim 95.9 and 100.1 in Bolga and Tamale. My name is Samuel Chen from the entire production team. We say good night.